Hi guys, how are you? This is Juan Rojas again. First of all, thank you for your patience yesterday, and once again, we apologize for all the technical difficulties that we had yesterday. We have absolutely no idea what was going on, but I was on another webinar at night, and they also had issues. So I think there was something going on with the internet connections, literally in different parts of the country. I know Yahoo had some other issues, and anyway. That's in the past, but I wanted to get you some of the information that we had wanted to share with you, and I know Dawn that it's best to try to share that with you. But from my conversation with a couple of other participants, it seems that you guys also had some difficulties with some distorted sounds, etc. So anyway, I wanted to pick up where we left off. So let me get to it real quickly. So basically, it was how to make money in real estate. And so one of the options, of course, is to work as a real estate agent, as a broker, and basically help other people buy and sell their properties. That's one of the ways that we make money. Another way is to be a landlord, so basically owning rental property, which is always a great idea. And the idea is simple, is that as you own property and the value of real estate goes up and your tenants pay down your mortgage over time, you start to build equity just like this, which we had tried to talk about yesterday. And here's a really simple but real example of what the math would usually look like if you were to own, for example, a $300,000 property. If you were to buy a $300,000 property, rental property, by the way, with 20% down payment, so that you buy it for 300, you put down 20% or 60,000, you end up with a mortgage of 240,000, and over time, how the mortgage starts to go down and how the value of the property starts to appreciate. And this is just at a really conservative 3% appreciation. Why do I say conservative? Because at least in Miami and New York City and in a lot of places actually all over the world, not just in Miami and some of the major metro areas, but we've seen property appreciation of 5, 6, 8, 10, 15%. Literally, this was absolutely happening in Miami and many other parts of the country. So 3% in the long run is very, very reasonable to expect, and it's also pretty conservative. So anyway, so the other option to make money in real estate is to buy, fix, and sell houses, which you can actually do this anywhere in the world, right? Whichever city that you live in, whether you live in Rome, in New York City, in Miami, in LA and Sydney in Australia. The catch always is, the trick to it is to be able to find properties at a significant enough discount. And usually the way that those properties are found are usually from where the sellers are in some type of financial distress. Sometimes they're in pre-foreclosure, they're divorce situation, they inherited the property from their grandma hadn't done any updates to the property in 30 years, and those are some of the many different situations that these significantly discounted properties come from. However, the reality is that these properties that are significantly discounted, they probably account to less than 2%, at least in the Miami area, to less than 2% of all the properties that are sold in the market. So not just the properties that are sold with a realtor, but I'm talking about all the properties. These types of properties are less than 2%. So they're not easy to find, but if you know the right people, the right contacts, if you know where to look, it is possible to find them. The other way is to become a private lender with your own money. So if you have some savings, usually actually private lenders and rehabbers, right, actually kind of work hand in hand. Usually the rehabbers are more hands-on. They're obviously more involved in the project, managing the day-to-day renovations. And the hard money lender is usually the one who puts up the money. And they can, there's a couple of different ways of structuring it. But if you ever decide to be a hard money lender, which I know one of our participants actually does and has been doing for many years, it's actually a really safe bet. And the reason for that is that usually you wouldn't lend more than 70% of the property's after repair value. So it'll be, let's say, a property like this that maybe once it's repaired, to keep numbers simple, let's say that once it's repaired, it's worth 300,000, and the investor, the rehabber, can buy it for, let's say, 200,000. And so you would lend, let's say, $200,000 to that rehabber with, and you are, just like a bank, just like Bank of America, just like Citibank, just like, Deutsche Bank, wherever you are in the world, you would be protected by 4 different things. One, a promissory note that's signed by the investor, the person who is actually in the deal, right? Guaranteeing that he personally guarantees that he's going to pay that loan. The second thing is a mortgage, which is basically a lien against the property. The third is what's called a lender's title insurance, which protects you as the lender to make sure that the title is clear and that you don't have any issues. So the investor, whoever the rehabber is, would pay for that insurance to insure you. And the last piece of security that you have as a lender is property insurance. So because even with all the best intentions in the world, even as if a rehabber says, look, I got this property for $150,000, after repairs it's worth $300,000, it only needs, let's say, $40,000, there's a huge spread of profit. Even with the best intentions, with a perfect deal, what if the property blows up? God forbid there's a fire, right? Or there's something terrible happens, and that is your collateral, right? The property, the house, that property is the collateral that is securing your loan to the rehabber, right? And so, so property insurance is the fourth item that would insure your money when you're a hard money lender. Now, we wanted to go over some tips that I think are really, hopefully you'll find really helpful. But yesterday we meant to ask you if any of you thought that, for example, having a pool in your house was a good investment. And so for most people, they might say, yeah, it's a great investment. It adds value. It's beautiful. People prefer a house with a pool. And it is true. But at least in Miami, and I know in a lot of other metro areas of the United States, for instance, to keep numbers simple, let's say that a pool like the one that you're seeing there, which is relatively simple, nothing fancy, nothing luxurious, a pool like that might cost, let's say, $30,000, $35,000, right, to install brand new. But if you needed to sell your property, that same property that you're seeing, for instance, in 2 or 3 years, you wouldn't be able to simply add the full $30,000 on top of the market value. Because in reality, what you get out of a pool is usually half. So if it costs you $30,000 to build, you'd be lucky if you got $15,000 back. Is it fair? No. Is it a reality? Absolutely. Now, the other one that is a great investment is basically paint. And a lot of people kind of take that for granted, but painting on the exterior goes a long, long way. To keep numbers super simple, if you were selling, let's say we're selling a property that was, let's say, 2,500 square feet, right? An average single family home, middle class neighborhood, to paint it on the outside, let's say that it was $3,000, but really the perceived added value to that property is probably close to $10,000. Of course, I'm assuming that after it's painted, that it drastically changes its appearance, right? So it's if the paint is really old on the outside and it's obvious, and you paint it on the exterior and also the interior, but just specifically speaking of the exterior, if you were to paint the exterior, it would significantly add, at least in my experience, minimum 2, but usually 3 times the cost of that update, of that investment, right? And again, specifically speaking of the exterior paint. So that's definitely one that is well worth the investment. The other question that I had for you guys yesterday was, what about that metal roof, for instance? So in Miami, a metal roof is actually really good, with the hurricanes and all. But even still, a metal roof tends to be the most expensive type of roof compared to shingles or tiles, right? And so metal roofs are the most expensive. And the reality is that metal roof is great because it'll last about 50 years. But usually when you go to resell a property, you would be lucky if you got maybe 60% of the value back anytime, like in the first 5 years after installing a brand new roof. And so it's important, if you're buying a property and you know it's going to be yours and you intend to be in the property, let's say for the next 50 years, then it's a good investment. Then it's great because you know that you and your family are going to be protected for the next 50 years. But if you're buying your property and you have any plans of selling it maybe in the next 2, 3, 5 years, a metal roof probably is not the best investment because it's going to cost you a lot of money up front and you're just not going to realize the full value of it in such a short period of time. So especially for investors, if you're buying, fixing, and selling properties, if you ever think of doing that, it's important to be really practical about the money that you invest, because typically, let's say it was this little single family house, it would be sold to usually a first-time buyer who honestly is just going to get really excited and thrilled about buying a property, number one, period. And two, they're going to be really excited about the kitchen and the bathrooms, not so much the roof. They expect a roof that isn't leaking, but they're not expecting a roof that is going to last them 50 years. So anyway, so keep that in mind. I think it'll probably save you some money. The other one that's a really good investment is just fresh outlets, right? If you're thinking of like renting your property or selling it, replacing the outlets or at least getting like an outlet cover that's fresh and clean, plus the interior paint goes a long, long way. It's kind of like detailing a car. It's kind of like think of maybe I don't know if this is going to sound bad, but like a beauty pageant, right? If a woman is in a beauty pageant and maybe she hasn't I don't know, shaved her legs and maybe done her manicure, that's going to make a difference. So anyway, here's another one, and it's bathrooms. But really not just bathrooms, but updates that, like for example, this bathroom is really nice. I would say that it's a little bit like the bathtub, at least it's a little bit on the luxury side. So if you put this bathroom in a luxury property, it'll be just fine. But if you put it in a maybe middle-class neighborhood or lower middle-class neighborhood, it's going to be way too much for it, and you're just not going to get back the added value, the cost of that investment. So it's always important to have the end in mind when you're thinking of, one, either renting a property, right, if you have rental property, or two, if you're thinking of buying, fixing, and selling property, even your own property. I've had a lot of clients, for instance, that decide to update. They know that they're selling, right? They know that they're going to sell their property in a year, and they update it as if they were going to live in it. And the reality is that although it's going to come out beautiful, it's the market, at least in the Metro Miami area, which is what I know, it's not always going to get you 100% of what you invested into it. So if you have questions about this, of course, feel free to reach out to me. The other thing that does go a long way is landscaping and the curb appeal. So not just the exterior paint, but also the landscaping, a little bit of gardening, mulch around the trees, some nice flowers, a flower bed, right? That will usually not cost a whole lot of money, but visually it really gives it a perceived added value in the eyes of the buyers. That is, in my experience, again, just like the exterior paint, easily 2 or 3 or even 4 times the investment, and so it's well worth it to do that. Another one is like, if you look at these two pictures, for instance, if you look at the ceiling lamp on one side and the ceiling lamp on the other, one of them is clearly more updated, but if you notice, the kitchen cabinets and the counters are the same. So if you notice the differences, it's pretty much just the ceiling lamp and the appliances. That's it. And this kitchen, the one that's more updated compared to the other, by the way, the one that's more updated, if you can notice, is a little bit more staged. The other one, for example, has the purse on top of the counter, and it has some bags and some other like a water bottle or something. If you look at this one over here, it's going to give a perceived added value. Just to ballpark it, I would say that this one on the right, I think hopefully you're seeing the same as I'm seeing it, but the one that's more updated, it's probably $5,000 more than the other one. And it may not be logical, but that's how buyers see it. So it's important to keep this in mind. Sometimes, depending on your market and how many options you have, you can even buy used appliances, like used stainless steel appliances, if you're thinking of reselling or even renting your property. So that's another option. Here's another good one, and it's basically decluttering. And if you look at the right one versus the left one, it's just the left one obviously is a little bit more disorganized and cluttered versus the one on the right, which is more minimalistic, right? And that is, again, it gives a perceived added value of literally thousands of dollars. The one on the left doesn't quite feel as welcoming. Yes, of course, you can tell that, they probably have some kids. Like I have a 4-year-old, and so my personal, home looks like this sometimes. But when we have guests over, then it always looks like the other picture. And so when you're selling a property, when you're renting a property, you pretty much have, one chance to make a good first impression. And you usually have no more than like 5 or 8 seconds before the client walks in and says, wow, I like it, I get a good feeling, or wow, there's something wrong with this, I don't like it, it's really bad. So anyway, I hope you find some of that information helpful. So anyway, so to wrap this up, actually let me give you a couple of other tips. So one of the other things that I actually wanted to share with you is I work with a lot of international clients that are not in Miami. They're literally from out of the country, out of the city. And one of the ways that I think my clients have found that it's easy for them to understand the whole market in Miami, and one of the reasons that I think they like working with me is that I try to be very transparent. I try to always put myself in their shoes. So if I was buying property in, let's say, London, and I don't know anything about London, I would probably want my agent over there, my real estate broker, to try to give me as much information as possible so that I can make an informed decision. And so what you're seeing here is actually what we call the MLS, the multiple listing service. And this is the system, the realtor system, the real estate broker's system, where we have access to all the properties and all the information of all the properties that are active, for sale, for rent, that have rented, etc. And so if one day, you or somebody that was interested in buying a property in Miami, or if you were buying a property somewhere else, this is something that you could ask your agent, assuming that they work like me. And most of them, if you're working with a good agent, if you ask and they're a little tech savvy, they should be able to provide this type of information for you. And this is what I always do. But I want to show you a little bit of how we help our clients make informed decisions. So here, for example, we're looking at all the 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condos that are active in a particular condominium. And if we were to pull up these condos, which is called Waterview Condo, you can see that the prices are $149, $157, $164, $179, $185, $195. And there are 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condos between 912 square feet and 1,030 square feet, which for anyone that's outside of the United States is give or take about 9.2 meters per 10 square feet. So it's a ballpark. So if you just maybe move the decimal point over one, like 1,000 square feet is roughly 100 meters, square meters. But in any case, if you look at this, you would say, okay, well, these condos are, around 160. This one's obviously the cheapest one, and this is, really expensive. But if you're on the outside and you don't really know which is a fair price. But what if you were to look at this like this, where we add the recently closed sales of the last 9 months, of the last 270 days? Now, all of a sudden, you can see that in the last 9 months, these 2-bedroom condos in this same condominium have sold between 122, 119, 137, 147, right? So the highest sale was 147, and it sold in these many days, right? And so this is how we help our clients on a daily basis make informed decisions, because sometimes our clients say, well, Juan, everything is so expensive. And the truth is that from their perspective, yes, it is, because maybe they're looking at, at the average of these 2-bedroom condos, that's at, 169, 170. When in reality, the highest recent sale was actually 147, and this property sold in 6 days. And this is, for example, this is what this one looked like, just so you can have an idea, right? This is what this one looked like. And if our client, for example, was an investor, and of course, I'm showing you a really simple example, but we can look at this, at all the same information in different areas, different neighborhoods, different price points. But for example, if our client said, how much does it rent for? I could, of course, tell them, and I could expect them to trust me. Or what I usually do is that I show them, and I'll show you here. For example, in the last 180 days, these 2-bedroom condos in this condominium have rented, as you can see, right around 1450, 1400, 1425, 1450, all the way up to 1500. And so here, by doing this, it's very easy for an investor to make an informed decision. If they say, okay, Juan, if we were to buy for, let's say, here, for let's say $150,000, and it rented for 1450, and the association, the monthly maintenance to that condominium was 267, and the taxes on an annual basis were, let's say, this 2,250, which is roughly 1.5% of the purchase price. And usually we charge our clients $100 per month, per property, to manage their property, to handle everything. But if this was the situation, and for example, if they were to buy for 150, and if they were to, let's say, remodel it for $10,000, they would still realize an annual net profit of about $10,000, $10,700. And so in a little condo like this, by the way, the address is incorrect, but the numbers, $150,000 investment, or I should say $162,000 investment, could net you 6.6% annually, right? A net positive cash flow after expenses, not including depreciation and not including appreciation, the future appreciation, right? Now, it's important to keep this in mind, because, for example, if I were to show you, for instance, a different area that maybe is a little bit more luxurious, where maybe it's let's say a $400,000 condo, right? That could rent for, let's say, $2,200, but the maintenance was, let's say, $750, right? Let's do this over here. If the monthly maintenance was $750 and everything else was the same, you can see how the net return on a property like this is something like 2.4%. And so whether it's you or one of your friends or clients, or whether you're investing here in Miami or anywhere else in the world, really, you should always look at the math, because they say that if it makes sense, if it makes money, it makes sense. It's super important to keep the numbers in mind. There's something really important as an investment advice to keep in mind, and is that you need to invest with your head and not with your eyes, right? It's very common to invest in what just appears to be beautiful, and it's not that it's a bad investment, it's just a different type of investment. But if you only invest in what's beautiful, honestly, more often than not, the cash flow is not fantastic, and sometimes even the appreciation is not fantastic. So I'm not telling you to not invest in things that are luxury. What I am saying is that make sure that you understand the numbers, and if you're working with a good agent should be able to help explain to you the numbers, even if it's not maybe so techy like this online through a screen sharing option. But even if they're meeting with you in person over your kitchen counter, going over the numbers and bringing all this information, today in 2019, any investor anywhere in the world should be able to have access to this type of information through their agent. And if you're working with a good agent, they should most definitely be able to help you do this. The other thing that we do, let me show you real quick. Now here's another property that I want to talk to you about as an example. So this was actually a rehab deal that we did with one of our clients. And this is what the property looked like on the outside. Unfortunately, we don't have any pictures of the interior here. We had some video, but the way that the numbers worked on this property is that we got it for $205,000. The repairs for approximately $40,000, and the expected resale price after repair value was $300,000. And if this was the math, then our expectation for our clients, for our clients that are looking to buy, fix, and resell, is for them to net at least a 10% return on investment within per project, right? So that if we can rinse and repeat that same process 2 or maybe 3 times a year, and of course it varies on how quickly we can find another project, another deal, but on something like this, then that turns that same seed capital can be multiplied, of course, can be put to work, and our investors can then realize between a 20 and 30% annual return by being involved in these projects. But so the way that this one worked, for example, let me show you over here. It was a similar situation, but I want to show you what the numbers were. And we ended up, by the time that our client was done fixing it, we had, they wanted to list it at $325, which, by the way, it's always important to make sure that you price your properties correctly. We ended up accepting an offer at $315. $325 was just way too much. But this is what the property looked like after it was repaired. So as you can see, it was completely updated with a modern kitchen, right? And by the way, when you're selling properties or even renting them, one of the things that we always do when the property is vacant is that we always decorate, we always stage kitchen and bathrooms, even if the property, it doesn't have to be a luxury property. It's just a good touch, and it goes a long way because it gives those clients, when they come in, it gives them that good feeling. And usually there's a woman who's involved in the buying process, whether it's the wife, the girlfriend, even mom or an aunt or grandma, or even a friend who's a female. There's always a female, a woman who's involved in the process. And so kitchen and bathrooms are what women are attracted to. And thank goodness for women. And so anyway, so if you're doing anything like this on your own properties now or in the future, keep it in mind. We always, for example, put some of the candles, the scented candles, to give it a good feel immediately right off the bat. All right. One of the things that I don't know if you can see here, but anyway, as you can see, completely updated. And so anyway, so this one worked out great with our client. And we're going to rinse and repeat it. Let me see if I can show you here. For example, here, just a little touch, but this little mat says welcome. We're in the rainy season in Miami. Right in the summer, it tends to rain not a lot all day long, but there always seems to be some summer showers in the afternoon. And so it's very common for it to be raining, 3, 4 in the afternoon. And so with the outside being wet, we wanted people to be able to, clean their feet on the way in and not make a mess inside. And anyway, long story short is that it worked out, beautifully. The client, the buyer is excited to buy it, and we should be closing actually next week at $315,000. So anyway, I know this was a lot of information. I hope you guys found it helpful. Please let us know if you have questions about this or anything else. You have my contact information. You can reach me on my website at jprrealestate.com and just contact there, or on my email at juan.rojas@jprrealestate.com. And you also have Dawn's information as well, which I'll show you here. And over here, so we'll definitely real estate is you should definitely diversify, just like Elena teaches all of us. right? But don't forget about real estate. It's very common sense. It can be very, very simple. You can do it in any part of the world, and they're not making, any more land. So it's we can definitely expect the price of real estate over the long term to always continue to go up because of supply and demand, and the population is growing and all these things. So don't wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait. Here's our contact information if you need to reach us. As you know, you can reach Don and myself over here. Here's his contact info. I hope you guys found this helpful. Feel free to reach us with any questions. Again, we appreciate your patience and your time, and we look forward to helping you any way that we can. All right, we'll talk to you soon.